Hi, I'm Francesca Jones, and I'm a senior city planner here at PBOT, and I'm the project manager of our 2045 Transportation System Plan Update. Thanks for tuning into this overview. I'll talk about what the TSP is and does and why we need it. I'll talk about the process we're undertaking to update ours, and I'll describe key aspect of the work, updating the list of major capital projects that fit into what is anticipated to be a much more constrained revenue outlook for the 20-year future. So what and why? The TSP is the 20-year plan to guide our transportation projects, programs, policies, and investments in Portland. It guides how and what we do in two key ways. One, our goals, policies, and classifications guide the maintenance, development, prioritization, and implementation of our transportation system, including the ways we manage our streets to function to their classifications. And two, it has our list of projects that best advance our goals and policies and fit into a financial forecast that would accommodate our population and employment growth 20 years in the future. The 2045 TSP update is considered a major TSP update, which means that we're updating all of these things as we extend the horizon year to 2045. The last time we adopted a major TSP update was in 2018 for our 2035 TSP. We're required by the state of Oregon to have a TSP that supports the statewide planning goals, and through the state's transportation planning rules, or TPRs, they tell us what needs to be in our TSP. And then Metro, doing an additional level of planning with our region in mind, also makes rules that our TSP has to be consistent with. We also have to be consistent with our own city comprehensive plan and working through public and political engagement process to update and maintain the TSP. This is altogether how we make sure transportation serves and supports our land use and the goals of our state, region, and city. The whole premise of all of this is to make sure we plan out how we're going to use the land we've got in order to meet the needs of future generations, knowing that if we don't plan well, inequities get exacerbated and carbon emissions and safety get worse. The state just updated the transportation planning rules in 2022 in a process known as the Climate Friendly and Equitable Communities Rulemaking, or maybe you've just heard it called CFEC. The rulemaking primarily focuses on Oregon's 8 most populated areas, requiring changes in transportation planning to ensure Oregonians have more transportation options to reduce single occupancy vehicle reliance. The purpose of the CFEC rulemaking was to better align the state's transportation planning with its long-term climate pollution goal. The rulemaking authority is the Department of Land Conservation and Development, or DLCD. They've added a number of requirements to TSPs that we've accounted for in our scope of work. The most important new requirement is that jurisdictions have to show projects lists that will result in no net new vehicle miles traveled, or VMT, generated in the horizon year, so the year 2045, if there are projects proposed to be included in the financially constrained projects list that are expected to increase VMT based on the scale of various project elements, such as new arterials, added lanes or interchanges, or other forms of automobile capacity expansion. Under the new rules, these types of projects now require what's called an enhanced review, which includes estimating changes in project-level VMT, following demonstration that those project elements are needed and can't otherwise be met by other modal approaches, TDM, or Transportation Demand Management approaches, or Transportation System Management and Operations, or TSMO approaches, or a combination thereof. If any of these types of capacity expanding projects are included in the financially constrained projects list after demonstrating that other approaches won't address the need, then we would also be required to evaluate whether that those projects VMT impact would increase overall system level VMT per capita in 2045. These projects also aren't limited to only being City of Portland sponsored projects, and the new rules now require state projects to be included in local TSPs where the projects are located. The rule's added focus on managing VMT is because the state knows that it will result in greater safety and equity. It's necessary to help keep our important freight goods and services moving. There's less wear and tear on our transportation assets, and it's better for human and environmental health and supports disaster and emergency response resilience. The new rules also recognize the importance of goods movement and freight access and include a special consideration of the needs of freight users in industrial areas as part of the overall projects list prioritization framework they establish. We will be drawing from the 2040 Freight Plan to inform project priorities in this regard. The rules prioritization framework also includes the need to support safe bicycling, walking, and transit access for workers in industrial areas. So we will also be looking to other modal plans for identified needs and solutions in those regards. So about our process to update. There are 10 different tasks in the TSP scope of work, each with multiple subtasks, and together they represent 4 phases of work, 3 primary phases, and then post-adoption implementation. In order to accomplish this work in-house with the minimal resources we have, we span the work over 3 fiscal years, and here's what that looks like. The groundwork phase is about assembling lots of information about our transportation system, informing our work, and meeting TPR requirements. This is also where we'll seek lots of community feedback to shape a transportation system vision and goals, which are the basic community priorities we'll want Portland's transportation system to meet. Those goals become the basis for criteria we develop to evaluate the universe of potential needs identified for the system. So in the groundwork phase, we'll be aiming for broad community engagement on the vision, goals, and evaluation criteria, hopefully this summer. And our Technical Advisory Committee and Community Advisory Committee will help us develop what we have to share for that. The development phase is where we'll be assembling the initial draft major capital projects list, and we'll want to have meaningful public engagement after applying the criteria to see if we miss considerations in applying the criteria that might make a difference on, for example, what projects make it above or below the financial threshold of what we're anticipating to afford in the next 20 years. And then the refinement phase is about engaging Portlanders to iterate improvements to their 2045 TSP. This is where we have pre-legislative process and the formal legal legislative process required of our TSP. The major capital projects list is actually 2 lists, a financially constrained list and a financially unconstrained list. And really the most important part is the financially constrained list, and I'll tell you why. Projects are required to be on what's called our TSP Financially Constrained Projects List for us to be able to program funds in the Statewide Transportation Improvement Program, or STIP, which are usually, but not always, state or federal grant funds. Projects also have to be on our TSP Financially Constrained Projects List to be eligible for inclusion in the RTP, or Regional Transportation Plan, and they need to be in the RTP to be eligible for regional and federal funding sources. And now, newly established in the state rules, the city is only allowed to develop, fund, and construct projects if they're on our financially constrained projects list. So in order to get money and in order to spend our own money on non-operations and maintenance projects, they're required to be on our TSP's financially constrained projects list. Well, what is financially constrained? We've got to do work to project out how much reasonably available funding we think we could leverage over the next 20-year horizon. And that still means we have to actively do the leveraging, meaning that over time we still have to seek out and secure the revenue necessary to fund each project. And that means staff going after grants and things like that to actually implement the plan. So it's kind of like figuring out how much we can afford, and then filling up a 20-year wish list of the most important investments we can make according to our vision and goals. The simplified version of what we've got to do looks something like this. We take the major projects from plans adopted since the last TSP, add projects already in the TSP, remove the projects we already did, layer on identified needs from an existing and future conditions analysis, and update project costs. Then that gives us a revised universe of projects, candidate projects for our major projects list, and they all go in a bucket. And then we put it through the prioritization process shown here as a Melita filter. We dump the whole bucket of candidates through the prioritization criteria we develop according to the goals and vision we develop for our transportation system. We fill up the constrained projects list with the top performers, and the rest land on our unconstrained projects list. There is much community engagement to be had in this process, and this is an oversimplification. So we hope that you'll stay engaged in this process. Please visit the project website at portland.gov/transportation/planning/2045 where you can sign up to receive our regular email newsletters for opportunities to engage. And you can also reach me and the project team at 2045tsp@portlandoregon.gov. Thanks so much for watching, and stay tuned for more updates.